the NGX All-Share Index is up about 16.5% year-to-date, led by the consumer goods sector, which is up about 51%. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Exchange updated key indices, including the adjustments to the NGX 30, consumer goods, insurance, and industrial good indices. Abigail Kazeem Adesina, research and insight analyst at Norrenberger, joins me now to unpack sentiments for equities this year. Thank you so much for your time today, Abigail. And before we get into the intricate details of the market so far this year, let me just get your take on the performance we've seen in the equity space so far this year.
Yes, so far,
all right, we seem to be having a challenge with that audio to Abigail right now. Let's take a quick look at how markets are performing across the region. I'll try and get back that connection to Abigail. All right, now we have that line back up to Abigail Kazeem, a research analyst at Norrenberger. Abigail, like you were saying earlier, just a run through of what we're seeing in the equities market in the first half of this year, up 16.5%.
yes, thank you, Kenneth. So earlier this year, in the first half of the year, the equity market witnessed some mixed sentiment. Right, earlier we saw sell-offs, and towards the end of the first half of the year, particularly the Q2 2025, we saw upticks, right? Upticks leading the equity market to closing at above 16%, right? And this was majorly on the back of consumer goods being cheering that position or cheering that lead, and also followed by the banking index, albeit by some very wide range, but followed closely by the banking index.
Yeah, because we saw quite a lot play out in the banking sector there, but unfortunately, the banking sector is not doing as much as the consumer goods space. And I'd love to get your take on what we're seeing play out in the consumer space, and also the reforms that we saw in the banking sector, and how that is impacting investor sentiment.
For consumer goods sector, last year, in the consumer goods sector, majorly last year we had they made huge losses, majorly on the back of FX losses, right? And however, when the Q1 result was released, the latest earnings was released, there were impressive turnout, right? We saw that the consumer goods sector, the companies in the consumer goods sector had already began to, recoup those losses and churned out impressive performance in Q1 2024 Q1. Right, so that was what drove the increase or the investor sentiment. Investors saw it as a major opportunity to key into or to take position in those stocks in the consumer goods sector. However, for the banking sector, particularly for the effect of the recapitalization, right, we expect to see, we're still seeing them, right? Banking sector is one of the major is one of the stable sectors that we have currently in Nigeria equity market, right? So we've been seeing the effect of the recapitalization process. However, most recently is the forbearance circular that was released last month by the CBN, right? Which can have a negative effect on the CBN. However, investors are taking a wait and see approach to see the companies that would be able to exit that position quickly, and the companies that will not, which will guarantee their dividend payments.
But I'd love you to speak to what we saw play out in terms of the adjustments that we saw in the market indices review by the NGX. We saw for the NGX 30, for example, we've seen Aradel Holdings coming into the board and Wema Bank, while Corner Oil and Julius Berger are exiting that index. For the consumer space, we've seen McNichols Consolidated coming up and then Golden Guinea Breweries leaving. Speak to what we've seen in terms of the adjustments that we've seen play out here.
Yes, the NGX 30 has been reviewed, right? Adding Aradel for the oil and gas, and also Wema, and also exiting Corner, like you said, right? Based on liquidity and market capitalization, the NGX 30 is usually regularly reviewed based on liquidity and market capitalization. So adding Wema to it, Wema was the 52-week low for Wema is around 9 naira thereabout, and having it right now at where we currently stand, and also Aradel. Aradel is one of the oil and gas companies that has good upsides, despite the downsides and the volatility that we've seen so far in the oil and gas sector. The oil and gas sector is the only sector actually that performed negatively in the first half of the year.
Yeah.
For the second half of the year, we expect that investors can still take positions slightly if they want to. However, the oil and gas sector is quite, the happenings or the updates in the global economy will also impact in what we see in Nigeria oil and gas sector. And some companies in that sector that has the capacity to move the index or the sector is Seplat and also Aradel, as well as Owando.
All right, interesting space to watch. The equities here in Nigeria, quite a lot of playing out. We've seen some other names even performing quite impressively this year. But I guess we'll definitely keep an eye to see how things continue to unfold. But thank you so much for your time today. Abigail Kazeem, the researcher and insight analyst at Norrenberger Financial Group.